Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead, and we have with us today Greg Soulje, agricultural meteorologist Greg Soulje, and he's here to give us a winter outlook. I know we're kind of in the midst of it again here, Greg, and then he's going to talk spring outlook, which I love. So Greg, welcome and glad to have you with us. If anyone has any questions for Greg, be sure to post those there in the in your chat or in your social media feed. Greg, go ahead, take it away.
All righty, Sarah, thanks much. Good afternoon to one and all here on the abrupt and rude return to wintertime, as you typically would experience it across the Midwest and on the plains, whether it's wind or cold, and the combination of both, or the rain has shifted to snow, and all of a sudden, within an hour's time, you have 2 inches of snow on the ground. One of these weird weather setups where at times, especially in the south end of Lake Michigan and parts of southern Wisconsin, northeast Illinois, and it's rare to have this go into effect. We had some snow squall warnings in effect because of zero visibilities and quick 1 to 2 inch snowfall rates that came down in about 20 to 30 minutes time. That was the strength of this first in a myriad of weather systems on the move in the short term. But yeah, we'll take a look at that and the updated winter outlook, some thoughts on springtime part 2, and some headlines coming out of South America. Unfortunately, the weather guy is failed in trying to come up with something that's going to help our markets around here. I don't know if it was by the millions or the billions, but I certainly heard that USDA cranking up some of those corn numbers in a bigger, broader sense by 3 million or billion bushels coming out of Brazil. Weather has continued to be just great for those folks, not great for us. And even the rains have come into parts of the southern plains, if you will, of Argentina. But we'll get to that in just a second. There's a visible satellite picture from this morning. Well-defined swirls and curls. And sometimes you just take a look at a visible satellite picture, and if you see these well-defined circulations bending and curving of the wind pattern via the cloud signature, you know something is cooking. And so those systems and the first of several tentacles, lobes, pieces, batches of Arctic air on the move into the northern plains and points on southward. So hopefully you livestock managers, bin and barn operators are ready to go with the drop in temperature, the wind chill, the change of footing, and certainly some extra feed requirements, and in an increasingly snowy weather pattern too, for especially the Great Lakes, the Eastern Corn Belt for openers. And we'll build that across much of the remainder of the Corn Belt and the plains going forward here in the next couple of weeks. There is the isobars, if you will, with a weak high over the northern plains, the stream of winds that are running from the Canadian prairie. They're packed up from the Western Lakes region on southward. That is the cold front that's come on by and has dropped temperatures by some 10 to 15 degrees for openers over a good part of the Eastern Corn Belt and building southward into the plains. And quite a reversal of weather. That's high pressure over Idaho, subtle offshore flow, that is. They've gone from warm and wet, too much rain, not enough snow, concerns on the peaks across the Sierra ranges about the limited snowpack and runoff potential. But in any event, a delightful go of it with outdoor work operations across the valleys of California and the southwestern reaches of the country. There's the upper air perspective and kind of a different look when you have those U-shaped configurations. Those are troughs. You can see some snappy disturbances in the trough across the Great Lakes areas. They're building southward into the southern plains. A little light rain into parts of the Rio Grande. Nothing to improve dryness and drought there. But just take a look at that U-shaped bending, that trough over the Great Lakes region, just then expanded as far west as the Missouri, build those upper level winds southward to the Delta, then abruptly swing them up the eastern seaboard through the Appalachian Trail. That's usually a signature of some troublesome weather from a winter storm standpoint over the northeast of New England. Lake snows when we get it cold enough, and we'll be able to do so. And there's not a lot of ice on these Great Lakes waters because of the spells of relatively balmy weather. And it opens up weather systems to ride out of the Northwest Territories of Canada, head straight southward, move into those trough positions, strengthen, and you've got more snow coming in the forecast as well for areas in particular from about the Missouri on eastward. This morning, you can see a dual cold front setup over the eastern Corn Belt, Ohio Valley. One front making its way down south of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Another boundary making its way in through Nebraska with incrementally cold air that'll send readings by tomorrow morning down below zero, where there's not a lot of snow cover left into the northern plains, upper Midwest, northern Great Lakes areas. It's really there, northern Wisconsin, upper Michigan, and northern lower Michigan, where the more significant snowpack remains. But we're going to fix that going forward, folks, and a very quiet weather pattern across the west. So on the headlines for this morning, sharply colder air on the move. If you have not set forth since maybe 3 or 4 o'clock this morning, when places like Champaign and Danville and Indianapolis were 40 degrees, they're currently down into the low to mid 20s, teens into the Wisconsin Dells area right now, and colder than that on northward and farther west. We have high wind advisories and high wind watches back west of the Missouri River through Nebraska, and that's something we'll talk about as well. So the snow showers and squalls will be picking up. They're doing just that through southwest Michigan, northern Indiana. That snow squall band that came through northeast Illinois is now down south of Indianapolis, much like a thunderstorm. And as you get in the summertime with the downpour of rain, you get these downfalls of snow. So something going on across the Hoosier State right now. And temperatures for the afternoon will stay down below 20 degrees across the northern plains, down into the single digits for highs into eastern North Dakota. But meanwhile, back west across the big sky country, and this is the delineation between the west side of that trough and the east side of the trough, 55 to 60 degree weather across big sky country. The other temperature drop is coming that way, but it's been a pretty easy going, relatively speaking, winter weather pattern for those folks out across Montana and the plains. Cold air on the move across the Tennessee Valley. There may be some cold weather concerns, maybe into the mid to upper 30s north of frost-proof Florida. That's now the northern end of Florida citrus in the next couple of nights, and probably some recurring frost and freezes as well down through the mid-Atlantic region, the Gulf Coast areas going forward over the next several days. That's not the first one they've had this wintertime season. When you get under these warm, stagnant high pressures, the warm air is up aloft, relatively speaking, as well. There's not much mixing or wind going on, so you get air quality issues with fog and smog, and issues are just not the greatest with regard to air quality across the valleys of California, including the San Joaquin Valley, which is unusually far south for that to happen this time of the year. And then there's the headline for the water equivalency. What's in the Sierra snowpack? It's left in less than 50% of normal. It should be higher than that. And despite all the rain, and that's really been the problem, where snow levels have been high, 7,500, 8,000 feet, normally in a winter storm, between about 3,000 and 5,000 feet. So you get a lot of rain up aloft and higher peaks, and it rushes on down. That's how we had all those debris slides and issues going on, but not a lot of snowpack across the west and southwestern reaches of the country. We'll shift gears here and move into Argentina. And there's just no big, bad, ugly headlines coming out of anywhere, particularly through Brazil. More rain and it's alleviated some of the dryness in the La Pampa Plains areas of southern Argentina for corn operations. Amounts have been generally quarter inch, but it's a start to getting some moisture back in there. Those areas around Cordoba, Santa Fe, they've been generally drier. Temperatures and everyone else have had a wide range, especially in that mid-belt of Argentina. That's a typical summertime or wintertime setup down there to see a wide range and coverage of rainfall and thunderstorm activity, much like we have here in the plains and Corn Belt locales. Temperatures have been a little easier to take. They've had some spells of heat with mid to upper 90s. It's been basically mid 80s to low 90s, so there's no stress or strain in those dry areas now because of temperatures. And as of the 8th of January, corn and soybeans are in that 90% range of being planted and complete, and maybe some harvest operations still to tidy up on the winter wheat side of things in through Argentina. Rainfall still into play across Brazil. Generally speaking, tends to have some spots that have been around an inch. That included any drier pockets. The only areas that remain generally drier from the recent rainfalls, but they've had rains prior to that, has been over the northeastern areas. Rains have been a little more inconsistent over the past week to 10 days in Mato Grosso do Sul and the Rio Grande do Sul area. Moisture has been there, but under a tenth of an inch. Doesn't really amount to a whole bunch, but again, they are in relatively good shape there, and temperatures have been kind of trending back to more seasonal norms as well. So no headlines out of Argentina, no headlines out of Brazil, too much of everything coming out of there. Well, and there is the Brazil update with regard to temperatures, by the way. Close to seasonal norms, 93% of their first crop corn and 86% of the beans has reached their reproductive stages as of Jan 8th. The Rio Grande do Sul area, soybean planting, 96% completed by the same date. 13% of that crop is already flowering. The corn crop at 93% planted, and most of that is in the grain fill stage. So moving right along, and of course, the rains elsewhere across that area have been on a beneficial note, at least as it applies to their crops out there. That's a snow depth chart back on when we last got together here in the live stream the 17th of December, thereabouts, and we had a couple of inches as far south as the Ohio into northern Kentucky. Kentucky in great shape from an insulation standpoint for some of these Midwestern winter wheat fields. And that's where it looked like this morning before the snows got going. Really situated north of the Twins, up towards the Arrowhead, north of and northwest of Lambeau and those big fishing areas, musky fishing areas in northwest Wisconsin, and generally up towards Boyne Mountain, the northern resort areas of northern Michigan, and the lake effect snowbelt areas. That's been it. And some snow across the higher peaks of primarily the northern and central Sierra and into the Cascades. But even that snowpack is disappointing from a perspective runoff standpoint going forward. So that said, rest of the afternoon, increasing north wind, plummeting temperatures. The rain will shift, if at least mixed with some sleet and some wet snow, maybe a snow squall to come through parts of the eastern and southern Corn Belt, lake snows into eastern parts of upper Michigan, northern lower Michigan. The lake snows will get going into places like Jasper, Newton, and Porter counties into Indiana. Conceivable some of those may graze some of the eastern shoreline areas of Illinois as the night wears on, and the rain will be shifting over to a healthy snow event for the eastern lakes region into the northeast of New England as the first lobe, this is the first of several lobes of cold air, begin to build on southward. By the time we get to Thursday morning, quiet, cold, high pressure and control across much of the Corn Belt locales. Lake snows will continue on through tomorrow morning into parts of southwest Michigan and, of course, across the lower lakes region. We'll get some rain as well into parts of central and south Florida. And we've got a developing weather system back into the northern plains. That is going to spell snow with increasing snowfall late Thursday, late tomorrow night, into Friday. That will be a more widespread system snow to start. And remember, these little systems, as they drop into that U-shaped configuration, the long wave trough position, if you wanted to sound like a meteorologist, they strengthen. It's just the right wind profile. The air is turning sharply colder up aloft, more or less as a polar air mass up above about 15 to 20,000 feet. So it doesn't take much, even in this element, this kind of cold, to get the clouds to grow into snow making levels. So the bottom line is get ready for it. Winter comes back across much of the upper Midwest, eastern and southern Corn Belt locales. So you melt down that snow, tenth to quarter, some outlier or third of an inch totals. And if that's a fluffed up less than 10 to 1 inch snowfall, yeah, we're going to get some accumulations and probably some blowing around in some of these open rural areas. Keep an eye on these decks and overpasses, areas that have not been treated or have lost their treatment because remember those rains we had back in the month of beginning part of January around here, the end of December. Those organized widespread rains and snowmelts might have washed some of that treatment away as well. So Saturday, there's that trough. There's an upper air low. And typically you see that when you're in winter storm mode. That's the upper air support. So somewhere in the Midwest, somewhere in the Great Lakes areas, I don't see lots of other forecasts that are peddling necessarily some tough conditions on Saturday, but there it is. You get west of that trough and the high over the Pacific Northwest. Well, that's air stagnation, but very mild air. And no rain in the forecast out there. That trough pivots through the Corn Belt into the northeast of New England. You get another little bending coming across out of the northern plains over Monday to Tuesday, off to the east on Wednesday of next week. So the cold air will moderate. The weather pattern will quiet down. But we're already seeing signs of how we're going to ramp up the winter storm season. We thought maybe the long range was going to blow a gasket and just go belly up around here, but it's not. Just a little kink in the forecast around here. We'll talk about that going forward on what plays out winter storm-wise going forward for the rest of January and into February. There are the systems here between Saturday, Sunday, and into Monday. So there's a pretty impressive one coming through Saturday, a weaker one in the Great Lakes areas for Monday, moving out on Tuesday, and the third system doing probably Tuesday night, Wednesday. Each one brings a little incremental amount of snow. Add up all these 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 in some spots. So already by the time we get to mid to late portions of next week in the Great Lakes areas, northern Corn Belt, and in the upper Midwest, put down a new 5 to 10 inch snowpack and snow cover and add to what has been melted away in the coming days. So that's the scenario at the surface. So going forward, we talked about the Clipper weather systems, bursts of snow down into the Great Lakes areas. Boy, heads up on that I-80-90 corridor out of northwest Indiana up through southwest Michigan. The other rain run will be on the Ohio Turnpike into northern Ohio and New York State going forward over the next several days. So outside and away from that, it's the cold to deal with across the Corn Belt from a livestock perspective. Outside of that, you get west of the Missouri. These winds are cranking down. the Canadian Rockies and the at least pass areas of the northern and central Rockies at 50 to 70 miles per hour. So heads up through Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, anywhere in that 80, 90, 94 corridor west of the Red River out towards the Black Hills and points on westward. And you're going to get buffeted around pretty good with this general wind pattern. Otherwise, quiet across the west. We'll keep an eye on sub-zero cold over the snow-covered areas of the Corn Belt and the northeastern plains going forward. And again, some frost and freeze potential, mid-30s as far south as frost-proof Florida. That's south of Orlando, north of Lake Okeechobee. Probably over the course of the weekend. Next 7 days, again, most of the moisture is keyed on the downwind areas of the Great Lakes areas, especially Michigan, Northwest Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and upstate New York. 1 or 2 feet of snow, we'll put it in that context. A little rain down through eastern Texas and down through the lower Rio Grande, which is good news, and some always beneficial rain into central and south Florida. There's the high wind perspective over the next several days west of the Red River, coming out of the slopes of the Montana region, as well as Wyoming, out through the Black Hills to the Nebraska Panhandle, 50 to 70 miles per hour. And there are the high wind watches and advisories in effect over the western half of the Dakotas and as far south as western sections of Kansas. So temperatures over the next few days, we'll be looking at readings this afternoon. Well, you've probably seen the day's highs are falling through and by the wayside to readings by tomorrow. Kind of a different look here to the temperature map, puts it in a better perspective. Highs only in the single digits and teens over much of the northern to western Corn Belt areas, as far west as the Black Hills, the cold air penetrating all the way south into Dixie. High temps by Monday of next week are stuck in the single digits, teens, 20s, and low 30s from the Ohio and southward. Recall, now this is not terribly cold weather. It's not Arctic air, but in consideration to the warmth that we've had here the past few weeks with daytime readings into the 30s, 40s, and 50s. So this is a real change in shockaroo of the system, and readings stay cold into at least the first half of next week. Overnight lows, this is the perspective by Saturday morning. Here comes, this is the main mother load of Arctic air building on in, down to 10 to 20 below zero up near the Canadian border. Probably some sub-zero cold as far south as I-80 northern Illinois Monday morning, and a range of single digits and teens over the northern and eastern Corn Belt, even a drop in temperatures back west and southwest of the Missouri River as expected, and some frost and freeze potential over the south end of winter wheat as well by the middle part of next week. Pardon me. The drought monitor from December 2nd, kind of close to when we first, or at least last got together on the live stream get-togethers here. And there's the drought situation, and that was prior to the January rains that came through Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio in conjunction with snowmelt. And there's been really not a lot of improvement. Maybe northern Indiana, that same east central Illinois, north central Indiana, northwest Ohio corridor still remains in a tough predicament. We've seen some modest improvement over the southeast, more significant improvement over the northeast and New England. There's the perspective as of the 2nd of December over eastern Illinois, and not much of a change on late last week's drought monitor. Still extreme around Champaign, and from there to Monticello, and then across the border to maybe Ball State, Buncie, Warsaw, Indiana, and east from there into the northwest regions of northwest Ohio. Maumee Valley is a big ag area right around Defiance and Napoleon, Ohio. There's the perspective from November in the northeast of New England, and there's perspective late last week into the northeast of New England, and so that goes in relatively good order. Most of that, well, initially it was rain, now has since been snowfall. And as of early November over the southeastern states, improvement there noted as we moved on through into the start of the new year. The forecast from the National Weather Service, or at least their drought mitigation operation, still pedaling, and we continue to agree with this. It's just going to come in lumps now over the rest of January and February with additional drought relief and significant drought relief. And that brings up a whole nother can of worms on how that's going to materialize. And we think it's primarily snow or mixed moisture makers for wintertime style over much of the eastern, central, and southern Corn Belt locales going forward. Next 6 to 10 days, we still have this persistent transcontinental transpolar jet stream pattern that runs from Alaska and eastern and northern Siberia, modifies a bit, but still delivers cold air on a pretty steady stream into the northern and eastern parts of the country. That's the 6 to 10 day. This is the government thinking. And the leading edge, and we think is the start, it's a little off, we think, but the right idea of getting more winter weather systems to be mindful for going forward as we head through the second and the end of the second, and more so into the third and fourth week of the month of January. Then you get this flow over the next 2 weeks. You've got a northern branch through Canada. You've got another system branch coming through Southern California, the Southern Plains. You put those kind of jet stream patterns together, and you got some issues on your hands, especially on this range of temperatures north to south, modified Arctic air to the north, some lingering warmth down south, and a little bit off, but the right idea that the eastern and southeastern plains, the heart of the Corn Belt in particular, and the Great Lakes areas will be in line for some frequent, maybe not necessarily winder uppers, but more frequent weather systems on the move with regard to winter storminess. So that said, here's our perspective for the remainder of winter time and going forward here in the second half of January. And we think that's the right idea. The alignment may be a little bit off from the feds and computer model thinking. We think there'll be some slivers of cold air that will dominate the northern plains. The core, the mother load, we think shifts into Hudson Bay, James Bay, north of the St. Lawrence River Valley, a warm bridge over the southwestern reaches of the country. And this particular setup is a little extreme, but not far off what you would take a look at in a climatology textbook for North America at this point of the wintertime season. But again, extremes on one end or another. So it gets this particular weather pattern going with busyness to contend with, maybe not necessarily all out winter storms, but just a frequency of systems and moisture in one form or another, northwest to southeast. That's the second half of January. We get a little westward, what we call long wave, westward retrogression of the long wave position. Yes, that occurs in dynamic meteorology. You can actually move the weather on westward, up aloft. And this is the story we come up with for the first half of February. And you know what's coming after this. A pretty busy, classic mid to late winter time setup on moisture for the Pacific Northwest, much of the northern and the eastern plains, and to the heart of the Corn Belt into the Northeast and New England. So that's the story going the first half of February. Second half of Feb, that Arctic air is firmly ensconced, and this is the more dominant snow-covered areas to begin with. We start to move into a slow weakening of La Nina, like hitting the brakes. So there's going to be nothing that really wants to accelerate into a pattern shift around here. So we keep the weather pattern classic and typical coming up out of Oklahoma and Kansas, these systems that hook their way through the Corn Belt locales into the Northeast and New England. So again, livestock managers, bin and barn operators, you might have been lulled into complacency in this winter season so far. Be ready here going forward. So that's the wintertime thinking around here. Lots to make up for in the wintertime sense of storminess, and at least weather systems and moisture, which should generally be okay. And we think most of the time, although we may get a low of this Arctic air to come southward, it quickly moderates. But anytime we're going to bring this cold air in, we'll make moisture. Anytime we moderate it, we're going to make moisture. So that's the thinking for the rest of the wintertime season. Thoughts on springtime? Part 2. We did this, I think, last time we got together in December. Not a lot of change, I think, going on for now. We do see the official unwinding and winding down of La Nina. We just mentioned that a few seconds ago. That process is finally underway. Don't think it's going to happen as fast as the feds are portraying, but it may contribute to initially kind of a delayed start to the planting season field work, but be able to accelerate into it nicely as we get forward into probably the key planting dates and seasons, at least as it applies to the Corn Belt. Southeastern part of the country, maybe a different story, some delays there. And I think we'll begin to wind down any significant moisture in some of the drought areas of the central and southern plains. So don't panic, don't worry, don't try to go out there in March and plant and you fall by the wayside because of snow or cold or frost or freeze. Give it some time. I think we'll be okay as we get deeper into the accelerated meat potatoes main part of the curve of planting operations across the Corn Belt. So hang in there. Early to mid-March, still kind of scary out there. The warmth over the southeastern part of the country. And this is a perfect setup, by the way, to get severe weather going. Temps will vary greatly over the Ohio Valley, southwestern reaches of the country. And so you got this stuff going on. The severe weather season gets it going in a hurry down through the southern plains into the Tennessee Valley and Ohio Valley and points on southward. Drier trend in the southeastern part, the Gulf Coast areas, and so maybe some early access out there, but still some late season moisture in one form or another for much of the plains and Corn Belt locales. There's this quick acceleration as we get into the last 10 days or so of the month of March. Cold air tries to begin to modify and moderate. This is kind of a return to a more classic textbook setup for the upper air. across North America for late March. And so we're okay with that. One thing we're not completely on board on, but we didn't change much of the thinking in the longer range. I think maybe that warm ridge over the southwestern part of the country, a little bit overdone on our end, but the right idea: warmth in the plains and down through the desert southwest, lingering cold as you would expect for the time of year, the Great Lakes, the northern and eastern Corn Belt locales, and still kind of a busy weather pattern. Late season snows up into the Red River Valley of the north, Minnesota, Wisconsin. I don't think it's going to be a big major snow melt flooding season. You know, we watch it every year in the Red River Valley of the north as it flows back up into Canada. I think it'll be normal, average, typical stuff. Late season moisture, though, and again, there are some drier pockets in the upper Midwest. So that's late March around here. Going into April, still the trough over the middle part of the country. We'll get these dabbles of cold air that settle into the Great Lakes region. We'll get readings that will head back to normal over the western and southern Corn Belt. Temps may vary in some of these Great Plains areas and Ohio Valley locales. The warm ridge, as we just mentioned, collapses for now through the month of April. So you get kind of this setup. It's a little bit rough looking and worrisome, but, and again, we may have some field work and planning delays over the southeastern states, but look at it as getting some moisture back in the ground. Any snow will be in the northernmost areas of the upper Midwest, Pacific Northwest, where you still get it this time, especially to the early to middle parts of April. And no shortage of weather systems, which I think we're going to, as a whole, should continue to improve the whole soil moisture column, maybe leading to some early, field work delays and planting delays in the Corn Belt. Those winter wheat fields will take the moisture because we know the usual rule of thumb: once you get about past April 15th to about May 1st, the climate in the plains goes on to more of a summertime setup of hit and miss rainfall chances. So there's some opportunity to get some of these plain states and winter wheat fields and pasture lands into some sense of moisture improvement. Here's the May outlook, and this is almost textbook, a little on the warmer side in the southwestern reaches of the country, about what the way it ought to be, with little lobes of cool air through the Great Lakes region. We think by the beginning part of May, La Nina done and over with. And we begin to move into a little more typical normal distribution of weather systems out of the Pacific Northwest. A little wetter for some of the spring grains and maybe sugar beet planting operations up near the Canadian border, and maybe some delays into the far northern and eastern aspects of the Corn Belt. I don't see that being long lasting or something that's going to make headlines or set markets, unfortunately, or fortunately, on the other end of things. So that's pretty much the story, at least for much of May. And that's pretty much the story there, Sarah, going forward here for the next 6 months or so.
Very good. I mean, at least we're going in the right direction, I would say, yes. Right? We're getting warmer, yes. At least for me.
Yeah. So I think the next 60, maybe close to 90 days, a little tough. We'll get some small windows, and people may get some angst in their mindset on the spring access out there. Look at it as the glass will ultimately be half full. We'll get some dryness and drought relief. I think with time, improve the soil moisture columns, and you'll have to see how your soil is made out, whether you can get out there on a certain day or week or not. But as a whole, as we get deeper into that middle beefy part of the curve for planting operations, I think we'll see a general acceleration from southwest to northeast across the Corn Belt. Plains ought to be in good shape, improvement over the southeastern part of the country. So I think going forward, kind of a win-win setup weather-wise for many areas of the country here as we move on through the next 60 to 90 days.
And of course, we'll keep our eye there on South America as well, and how those crops are doing down that way.
Yeah, I don't have any good news for us and bad news for them down there. It's just the beat goes on, and maybe on the back end of La Nina, maybe they trend a little bit wetter as they get deeper into maybe second round of crop harvest down that ways. But I don't see anything super big going forward out of there till maybe late in the season. It may be harvest related, and that's the only optimism I have coming out of South America.
Very good. All right. We'll be checking in again with you on Friday here, Greg, and taking a quick look at where the weather's at. And then, of course, about every Tuesday and Friday, we do that throughout the week. And Fridays when we take another look at South America and the conditions down that direction. So Greg, thank you so much for joining us here today.
And on This Week in Agribusiness every weekend as well.
That's
so we update
right.
that
I forgot to mention that.
Don't forget that.
Don't forget that. Yep. That's an important part. Thank you so much, Greg. Good to see you.
Thank you.
We want to thank all of you for tuning in as well. For Feedstuffs, I'm Sarah Muirhead.